It's a battle many have likened to that of David versus Goliath, the fight between taxi drivers and ride-sharing firms like Uber and Lyft. The Massachusetts Senate has spent much of today debating the finer points of their bill, which the Globe describes as, quote, state Senate to debate bill that would change little. Back in March, the House passed a bill which, among other things, would create a new state division to oversee licensing and oversight of these companies, would require additional vehicle safety inspections, state background checks, although no fingerprinting. It would also ban the companies from operating the cab stands near Logan and the Convention Center. Of all these issues, the fingerprinting one is among the most contentious, with several law enforcement agencies, including the BPD, urging lawmakers to make it happen.
We vet all our drivers out real well, the Hackney drivers. In fact, we fingerprint them all now. And it's just taken that extra measure. We worry about sexual offender information. You know, we have no offense. I think Uber offers a great service. I just don't know what they get to hide. It takes all of 10 minutes to get fingerprinted. And if we can take that extra measure of security, then what evil is in that?
Now, when Senate President Stan Rosenberg was on our show back in March, he appeared to agree. Is it going to be in the Senate
I think
version?
we should look at it seriously, and I'm inclined to think it's a good idea. If we're doing it for taxi drivers, I don't know why we wouldn't do it for the Uber drivers. We're trying to create a fair and level playing field. They're doing the same job. They're picking people up and delivering someplace. The rules ought to be roughly comparable.
That was then. This is now, as the Senate version of the bill not only does not include a fingerprinting requirement, it also dropped the Senate's ban on ride-sharing companies at Logan and the Convention Center. As we heard last night from Steve Smith at the Boston Globe, money may be talking here. Uber alone has put more than $300,000 behind its lobbying efforts and brought in people as big as former Obama campaign head David Plouffe, all to fight against these tighter restrictions. Joining me now is Scott Harshbarger, obviously former Attorney General, former president of the group Common Cause, a citizen advocacy and watchdog group. He's now senior counsel with Kasner and Edwards LLP. Scott, it's really good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Is it unfair to say, it's not illegal, is it unfair to say that we may be watching Uber by a law on Beacon Hill?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is a
It's not unfair.
No, it's not unfair. But on the other side, you can see that taxi drivers are well represented as well. I mean, in a sense, this kind of lobbying by now, I don't know why we're shocked about this. This is a classic pay to play. That is, you put your money out there, you put the best lobbyists up on various special interests and wage. Where's the question is, Jim, where's the public interest? Where are the people who represent the average people?
What's the answer to that question?
Well, it should be your elected officials, right? But the reality is this money is being spent on campaign contributions. It's being spent on lobbyists who are influencing them. And I really think that's the problem. Is Stan Rosenberg's point was very good. That is, why not have a level playing field? Either way. I mean, if this is a new business model, then why can't let the taxi drivers compete with that model?
Because, and I think he's a person of principle, because he went back and found out a majority of his 39 members were, I wouldn't say on the take, that's unfair, were, quote, convinced by the Ubers and Lyfts that there was a better idea.
Well, but what's the better idea here? This is a broader substantive issue. What's the better idea? That is, it just because it's a tech type thing, and we're the new tech wave here in Massachusetts, which means that you can have DraftKings, which is gambling, but call it something else? I mean, or is it that we're trying to make sure that regulation does not impair good business plans, good business models?
You left out the third reason. The better idea is because they want it. That's good enough, and they got a lot of money to pay for it. You know what's also troubling about this? I know you see this all the time, but this is like a microcosm. When I'm reading in the Boston Globe story who the lobbyists are. Former head of government relations for Deval Patrick. Again, perfectly legal. 2 former state reps. It is this revolving door thing where, once again, we don't get a voice in that kind of thing, but the boys and girls from inside talk to their former colleagues.
We're seeing why people are so upset about Washington, D.C.'s dysfunction, because it's the lobbyists and the others that are having their interests heard, and the public interest is not being heard. Now,
you know who you sound like?
Who is that?
Donald Trump. No, I'm serious. I mean, that is essentially the Trumpian message.
Well,
and the Bernie Sanders message.
Yeah. Of course it is. And we wonder why 71% of the people in that Edison Research poll have economic anxiety and think the system is rigged. Because it is rigged, Jim. It's maybe legally rigged, but the special interests pay to play. The public interest sort of sits out quietly, doesn't get heard very often. And we see it very small ways in Massachusetts, obviously. But what you're seeing here is the way reality works in terms of the legislative process.
So fix it. I mean, you're the czar of this for a day, not something preposterous, something that passes the laugh test. What can you do? Let's stay in Massachusetts to fix this so that people with money don't have all the power and the rest of us have virtually none
Well,
of it.
first of all, I'd like to see a group like Common Cause maybe being funded adequately so that it could be the people's voice up there, not just on campaign issues, but on all issues.
Publicly funded?
But no, with the broader issues. Look, these folks aren't being publicly funded, Jim, but the reality is if we want the public interest to be heard, has to have public financing. Secondly, you know that I believe we should have contested elections. 2/3 of these folks are not up for election, not having any contest. I think you need a third party of some type, a voice that represents the people, the independent voice. That's the check and balance we need. We don't have checks and balances.
Is that
now.
Johnson and Weld to you or no?
Well, Johnson and Weld at the federal level, perhaps here. I think the fact is that we don't have contested races. It means that incumbents have a lot of power. Lobbyists rightly go to the people who can speak for them, and that's how they get the power.
When you were the Attorney General, when you ran for governor, 2000 you ran for governor?
No, 1998.
Excuse me, close enough.
It was a little longer ago.
Did you take lobbyist money?
I don't know. I think to the extent that we took money, we took the contributions.
Well, but if you took it, and I assume you would say it would not affect me if I did,
right.
then why should we assume that it affects senators if it doesn't affect you?
I'm not sure that it affects them in any sense. It just means that their voice gets heard.
They get access.
They get access, and others do. Now, in this particular fight, by the way, I mean, Uber and Lyft may be spending a lot of money, but so are the taxi cab companies.
Not as much.
And not as much, right. But the reality is that the question somebody's rightly asking, sitting outside, is who is speaking for me up there? Who is representing the citizens? Look, you had Kevin Peterson on here, citizen engagement. How do you get people to be involved? If they feel they have no voice, if nobody's representing their interests, then what's the problem? One-party state causes that problem.
You know what? You should run for office, you know?
Been there, done that, my
Scott
friend.
Harshbarger, it's
Thank
great
you.
to see you.
Nice to be on.
Thank you
you
so much, former Attorney General Scott Harshbarger.